Senator Joe Manchin, of course, abruptly pulled the plug this week on the Democrats'
No, Martha, he didn't abruptly. Martha,
okay. He abruptly on Friday.
He didn't abruptly do anything.
He was negotiating for a while.
The president's agenda. No, look, if you check the record 6 months ago, I made it clear that you have people like Manchin, Sinema to a lesser degree, who are intentionally sabotaging the president's agenda, what the American people want, what a majority of us in the Democratic caucus want. Nothing new about this. And the problem was that we continue to talk to Manchin like he was serious. He was not. This is a guy who is a major recipient of fossil fuel money, a guy who has received campaign contributions from 25 Republican billionaires. Do you think this guy is serious?
Senator, okay, you say he wasn't serious, but Manchin says his main goal is to do what's good for West Virginia, and he's worried about inflation.
Okay, Bernie Sanders is still trying to tell some truth about what's going on with Joe Manchin and his obstruction of the Democratic agenda and the promises that Joe Biden made. There's aspects to how they're not holding him to account enough, but Bernie Sanders is doing that. The aspect of this story here is Martha Raddatz in her line of questioning, because Bernie's tired of the narrative around Joe Manchin, which majority of progressives are, and he's also seemingly upset about the way the media keeps carrying water for him. Well, Joe Manchin, but Joe Manchin, but he said this, but he said this, but he said that, but he said it, but you can't say that about another Democrat, can you? Constant defense of Joe Manchin, despite how much he thumbs his nose at everyone else and says, I don't care, that doesn't help me. So let's see Martha Raddatz continue with this prepared line of questioning that she has to ask because that's her only job. Let's watch more.
But Manchin says his main goal is to do what's good for West Virginia, and he's worried about inflation. Listen to what he told the West Virginia radio station. Listen to this, please.
Is that right?
Inflation is absolutely killing many, many people. They can't buy gasoline. They have a hard time buying groceries. Everything they buy and consume for their daily lives is a hardship to them.
Your reaction to that, Senator?
Look, the same nonsense that Manchin has been talking about for a year. West Virginia is a beautiful state. I've had the pleasure of being there. Great people. It is one of the poorest states in this country. You ask the people of West Virginia whether they want to expand Medicare to cover dental, hearing, and eyeglasses. You ask the people of West Virginia whether we should demand that the wealthiest people in large corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. Ask the people of West Virginia whether or not all people should have health care as a human right like in every other country on earth. That's what they will say. In my humble opinion, Manchin represents the very wealthiest people in this country, not working families in West Virginia or America.
So the only problem I have with Bernie Sanders said there was that he said, in my opinion, Joe Manchin works for the wealthy people and corporations in this country and screws everyone else over. That's not an opinion, Bernie. That's a fact. By the way, what is this all about, huh? Because Manchin is opposing more things on the agenda. There's a new thing. This isn't old stuff. He's still doing it. Look at this. So Joe Manchin appears to have torpedoed a cornerstone of President Joe Biden's economic agenda, telling Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer Thursday evening that he won't support moving forward on proposed tax hikes on wealthy Americans and corporations that would pay for a package of climate change and energy policies, at least not right away. And this according to two aides familiar with that matter. Now, this legislation is basically a slimmed down version of the Build Back Better plan that he also got rid of and torpedoed and danced around and said, but maybe not this, but maybe that aspect, but this other one, and then maybe later. Like he's saying right now, that's what Bernie was also talking about. He's been doing this for a year, so more. Because he had agreed to allow Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices. Joe Manchin, finally, potentially saving the federal government $288 billion and bringing down costs for seniors. In addition to a 2-year extension of pandemic era premium subsidies for lower income Americans that are enrolled in Obamacare. And in a statement on Friday issued while he was in Saudi Arabia, Joe Biden, the president of the United States, urged the Senate to move forward on the slimmed down set of proposals that Manchin endorses, even if climate proposals have been left on the cutting room floor. So it looks like the president of the United States in the same party as Joe Manchin is following his lead and be like, okay, you guys, hey, listen, I'm in Saudi Arabia right now, fist bumping. What I need you to do is make sure you follow Joe Manchin's lead that he finally gave us one aspect or a few things that we can maybe do. Because then he said, yes, it's okay, but maybe later he won't. I don't know, but just follow his lead. It's weird. Because last I checked, Joe Manchin was not the president of the United States or even the head of the party in the Senate. None of that stuff. Either way it goes, He's allowed these negotiations on Medicare to continue, as I mentioned. Allowed them. That sounds like somebody that's in control of everything else. He's allowed them to continue. So as soon as I heard that, I remember this video from this ExxonMobil lobbyist that was talking about who the big name players are, who they depend on to continue to not pay any of their fair share and continue to rip people off and also destroy the environment. And then every time legislation comes forward, torpedo that too. Maybe you can remember who's on his list. Remember this?
Senators pressed to do Exxon's bidding behind closed doors.
You want to be able to go to the chief. Yeah. And so the chief knows you, that you can go to the chief and say, look, we've got this issue. We need Congressman so-and-so to be able to either introduce this bill. We need him to make a floor statement. We need him to send a letter. Yeah. You name it. We've asked for everything.
So who are the fish?
I'm Joe Manchin. I approve this act because
the biggest catch, according to Mr. Coy, it's the conservative Democrat Senator Joe Manchin, who famously shot President Obama's cap and trade climate bill.
And I'll take dead aim at the cap and trade bill.
Who's the crucial guys for you?
Joe Manchin. I talk to his office every week. He is the kingmaker on this because he's a Democrat from West Virginia, which is a very conservative state. We look for the moderates on these issues. So it's the Manchins, it's the Cinemas.
They look for the moderates on this issue, and the kingmaker being Joe Manchin. Now, Martha Raddatz may have asked Bernie Sanders or told him, hey, but this is what Joe Manchin said. Let me read this prepared statement, just trying to cover up all the things that he's up to. And instead of literally going to what we've already seen, that's not a new video. What we've already seen and how they've talked about who they rely on to continue pushing their same efforts and write the bills for politicians to submit and vote on or not vote on or reject or put hurdles in front of like Joe Manchin does. David.
The shame in all of this is that also, I mean, on top of everything you just identified, is that Martha Raddatz, who I think is a wonderful journalist, but to take Joe Manchin's word that he cares about inflation, if you look at the proposals that he supported, even the proposals that he supported as of 3 weeks ago, there was nothing inflationary about any of them. Any of the energy policies, the spending money on climate. No, every economist that said this will not cause inflation. But the media allows Joe Manchin to torpedo and sabotage Joe Biden's agenda by saying, oh, but he's concerned about inflation. No, he's not. That has nothing to do with inflation. And at a certain point, the media has to be more responsible and actually look at the policies that Joe Manchin supported, which he now is against because of inflation, and go talk to economists and find out from them. Oh, is it really about inflation? Because they'll tell you it's not, which then leads you to believe, well, why is Joe Manchin doing this? Because he's torpedoing the Democratic agenda. That's why he's carrying the water of these energy companies. That's why.
Because he's paid to. I'm glad you pointed out, David, that about Martha Raddatz, because I don't want to go so hard on her like it's been the plan. But the approach is, I had this question about Bernie Sanders is going to be opposing to what Joe Manchin is doing. Here's what Joe Manchin has to say. I just would like for it to be more of a complete approach. We know who he is. We know what he said and what he's done and what has been said and done about what his approach is to these types of things. We can't forget who he is and who he has been while this argument happens. So I get it. And maybe she was rattled because she had a specific direction she wanted to go and he was interrupting and talking over sots and everything.
Well, it still would have been interesting if she would have said to Bernie Sanders, look, Senator Sanders, yes, Joe Manchin is saying a bunch of nonsense about inflation. Yes, there's, who knows why he's doing this, but what do you make of him torpedoing the Democratic agenda? Bernie Sanders' response is still interesting. Martha Raddatz didn't have to buy into this. Oh, but he says he's worried about inflation. Do your homework. He's not worried about inflation. That is not what is driving him. What is driving him is what he owes the energy companies. And say, look, he's in the back pocket of the energy companies, Bernie Sanders. What do you do about it? Bernie Sanders' response would be interesting.